Good evening. I call this special meeting of the Columbus City Council to order for September the 15th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. At this time, I would like to ask Vice Mayor Mickens to open our meeting in prayer.
All hearts and minds clear. Oh, gracious and humble Father, once again we come before you, Lord, just saying thank you for who you are and what you're doing in our lives. We thank you, Lord, for this body that you have put before us. We thank you for the council. We thank you for the mayor. We thank you for our attorney. We thank you for everyone this evening, Lord. We ask you to bless right now, Father. Help us, Lord, down this path that we are on. Give us clear eyes, oh Lord, to see what we can't see. And give us ears to hear what we can't hear. Lord, we pray right now that this revised version of this budget, Lord, be acceptable, not only in our eyesight, but in our eyesight. Let everything that we do here, Lord, be done decent and in order. Bless right now as we go forward. And let us keep in mind, Lord, that we are one. Let not this budget divide us. Let us keep us together. Bless right now, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vice Mayor Mickens. Before we move into the policy agenda, I would like to address the council and the citizens. Thank you for those who are present today. Thank you for those who are watching at home. I want to start by apologizing and saying that we are back today in a very different place than we were last week. There's no one to blame for that but me. I am the mayor. My eyes were the last ones to see the budget before it went to the council. It was my responsibility to make sure that the budget was in place properly for them to review and make comments on. I would also like to say, these are not excuses, but being a very young administration, the folks that work with me were working diligently and hard, paying the closest attention to detail to get this budget right, because we're doing it for our citizens. And we are determined to be the best stewards of this money that we can be. As you know, Columbus has a lot of serious issues that we're dealing with. And so trying to do this budget just beginning a few days after you take office, again, I'm not making excuses, but it is slightly challenging. So I'm again apologizing to the council and to the citizens and to my staff, because I think they have probably had some things said about them unfairly that I truly regret. Now, before we move forward, I want to do a couple of other things if you will indulge me for a minute. What is a municipal budget? I put some thoughts together today to try to explain this to how I see our responsibility towards this, so you can understand thoroughly where we're coming from, or where I'm coming from as your very brand new mayor. Each year, a city must forecast the expenditures and revenues it will incur in the upcoming year. The resulting formalized document is known as a municipal budget. Every city is required by law to balance its budget each year. The budget should be constantly monitored throughout the year to determine whether the city is spending more or less than its revenue. The city then makes the adjustment to its spending in order to ensure that at the year's end, the budget is in balance. What does the city budget do? Each year, the mayor, the city council, and city staff work together to develop an annual budget. While the budget is being created, all parties must make decisions on how to utilize the limited, let me repeat that, limited revenues that the city receives in order to produce the greatest benefits for the citizens. Let me repeat that. On how to utilize the limited revenues that the city receives in order to produce the greatest benefit for the citizens. The budget serves as an outline for how the monies that come into the city of Columbus should be spent to maintain and improve the city. The mayor, city council, and interested citizens of Columbus should all serve as participants in its creation and execution. I'm going to repeat that. The mayor, city council, and interested citizens of Columbus should all serve as participants in its creation and execution. The budget is just not an accounting document. It is a management and planning tool. Because the city is limited by the amount of resources available, the budget aids officials in determining which objectives have the highest priority and will produce the greatest positive impact for the community. It can be intimidating to try to wade through a large government document filled with obscure acronyms and confusing charts. But that is our responsibility, and we are doing it. Obviously, not perfectly, but we are working extremely hard to get it right. And we will get better and more efficient as we go. Again, let me emphasize, I am to blame for where we are right now. Not anybody at this table, not anybody sitting out there on my staff, me. I will be happy to answer any of the hard questions that should be coming my way. You can ask them tonight, or you can come by my office, or you can call me or email me. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to explain in detail to your understanding how this era occurred. We're also going to talk about how we're going to fix it and how the staff at City Hall has worked tirelessly to get ready for tonight. And I can assure you they did it with their hearts on the table and very sad that it came to this. But again, and I told them again today, it was not your fault. It's the mayor's responsibility to catch any situation like that. So now that I've said that, I'd like to turn to the media for a minute. You've heard me say often in the campaign that I refer to the media as the fourth estate. What is the fourth estate? It refers to the press and news media both in the explicit capacity and advocacy and implicit ability to frame political issues. Though it is not formally recognized as part of our political system, it wields significant indirect social influence. What are ethical standards? The common elements, including the principle of truthfulness, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and accountability when reporting newsworthy information to the public. Now, because I have an undergraduate degree in journalism, I feel like I am somewhat qualified to comment on this, and so I plan to. I believe, and I stated this on my Facebook page today, in being cooperative with the press. And I'm not angry with our local newspaper, but I'm extremely disappointed. And let me tell you why. First, I thought the headline was a little over the top into the situation that we're in right now. I understand they need to sell newspapers. I understand journalism ethics. It was a fair headline, but I don't know that it was completely accurate. That's a debate for another day. But the thing that really got under my skin just a little bit for a few minutes, and then I got past it, was the opinion page of the Commercial Dispatch. Especially when it said this: oversight signals need for more attention to detail. Right back at you, Commercial Dispatch. Since I've been in this position, I have been spoon-feeding the paper information to try to make sure the citizens got accurate information. Since that time, I've been misquoted, and my comments have been taken out of context. Again, I'm not mad with them, and I'm not going to fight with them, and this is not going to change how I work with them, but I've had conversations with editorial writers there and with reporters there already and discussed where they misquoted me and took things out of context. This is how you do it. You leave a word out, you rewrite a sentence, you leave a sentence out, you interview two people separately, then you put their quotes together in the story. That's out of context, in my opinion. What I'm trying to do as your mayor, and will continue to do, is have them shine a light with all the other news media on City Hall and what we're doing. That is needed, that is a must, and if they continue to do what they're doing now, I will still continue to do my part, and I will continue to call them out. So, having said that, I feel much better. We're going to move forward, and we're going to go into the policy agenda. Council members, we have our policy agenda before us with the 2021 proposed budgets. All council members received a draft of the budget along with the document last evening and earlier today for review after much work by our COO and CFO. I looked over it. This time I think we've got it. I will now turn the floor over to the Chief Financial Officer and Ms. Delia Vaughn, Mark is our interim, and Delia is our she's the CFO, and Mark's the COO. I've gotten frustrated. So everybody knows Mark and Delia, and so they're about to take over at this point. There's going to be a video behind me. Council has the information in front of them as a PowerPoint. What we were trying to do here is give a brief overview about what brought us here today. And Mark and Delia are going to work on that.
And I'm going to go through it and I'll answer any questions, I guess, the council has or somebody else has. I'll go through it. So, budget revisions. This is a general timeline of working on the budget. So we started. Elected July 1. The mayor was elected July 1. I think Delia and I met the first time on July 8th about talking about the budget. All the individual budgets were mailed to the department heads and returned in that week. That was also the time when the mayor and I met with the department heads about their needs. We assembled the budget basically the end of August through September, calculated the millage, and then of course you see the 14th where we have the omission meeting that we have tonight. Oops. An omission was discovered on September 14th, just like the mayor said. The budget has to balance, which means that all the expected revenues have to equal all the expected expenditures. The omission that was shown was on the expenditure side for the garbage collection, the fee that the city is charged for collecting the garbage. There's also some other omissions and errors that were in other approved budgets that led to this. It's a complex thing. The city collects roughly $2.1 million, plus or minus $100,000 a year in our revenue for garbage. This is what the citizens you would have on your light and water bill when you live in the city. That revenue, the projected revenue, was included in the budget, but not the previously mentioned expenditures that the city's charged for having the garbage collected. So where does that leave us? The city has to close a 1.06 roughly $1 million budget deficit to balance this budget. As previously stated, again, state law requires municipalities to balance the budget, but also they must adopt their budget by September 15th, which is today. Here's, in general, this is not everything, but the major reductions to balance the budget. The anticipated surplus is wiped out. We cut some crime lab. We can look at this in more detail if the council chooses. I included all that. Crime lab equipment, the police radios, which would be the MISWIN radios to get on the system, the self-contained breathing apparatus by the fire department, and then deferred maintenance across several departments, primarily the Charter Convention Center, the general care and maintenance budget, and Parks and Recreation. This revised budget is balanced per state law. So, I prepared what I call a budget reconciliation, which is the reconciliation of the back to the deficit from the budget you were presented at the previous meeting to now. Does everybody have that in there? It's the one that's colored like this. I can go through it by line item. If you have questions, I can go through it. You tell me how you want to do it. You want me to go by line item? Okay. Starting with the garbage fee. So that's the revenue collected by the garbage. Originally, it was projected at 1.9 million. I sent email to all of you the actual collections, the actual revenues taken in, paid from by Light and Water Department to the city. We're on track this year to eclipse over $2.1 million in revenue. Last year, we were over 2.2 million. Based on the number of customers getting their garbage picked up and the associated expenditures, I revised up that number. Essentially, what's happened is that more people we've had more expense associated with picking up the garbage, but they've never increased the revenue. So I feel comfortable in increasing that amount.
Does everybody understand that?
Does everybody understand that? Now that I've talked about that, I'd like to skip down to the expenditures for solid waste just so we can have some continuity, and then I'll jump back up to all the other things. So if you jump down to solid waste, you see how that's changed. I made a note. These are revisions based on the actual expenses, okay? And they've been reallocated to the correct line items. I also emailed you each a sheet that showed the reallocation across those line items. And what that is for is because those three line items, one is for dumping, the charge cost to the city for actually putting the garbage in the landfill, the actual collection or pickup of the garbage, and then recycling. Those things were, what would you say, July?
Was not coded correctly.
They were not coded. So Delia and I redid it based on where they should be. And so for instance, garbage dumping, that's where you had a majority. A lot of the collection expense was coded to the dumping line item, which we recalculated it and moved it to the correct line item to make the budget more accurate. Okay, so that's the expenditure side of the solid waste, and we've covered the revenue side. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Now, to what was changed from the original budget to this one that's presented. Information technology, they asked for a dramatic increase in travel. I reduced it back to the previous year's allocation. The equipment, which was capitalized, they asked for several things. One that we funded was a new Microsoft Office suite because we're existing on old technology at City Hall, well, the whole city. That was reduced. I still left them money in their equipment to do and fund equipment. just based on trying to balance the budget. I mean, they have to have some funding there.
Or what they would need.
And based on previous years' expenditures and equipment. Rentals, I reduced in Crime Lab, the rentals, I reduced that to the previous year's allocation. They're not gonna, this year they haven't gone over it, so I reduced it back to that. Capitalized equipment, they asked for several pieces of equipment. This was a piece of equipment that was requested by independently. I mean, in talking with the police department was requested, and in the Crime Lab, it was one of their equipments, vacuum metal deposition machine. That's what allows fingerprints to be found on items where it's hard to pull fingerprints. Cut that. The police, meals, prisoner meals and medical, I mean, this was a sort of, the original number was, I don't want to say a plug-in number, but it was based on some historical basis because of COVID and the amount of, they did not wanted to house as many prisoners. That number's, this year is very low. But what I did is revised it based on pro rata and then added padding in there, but it's still cut it by 32,000. I don't think, that's essentially double where we would be this year. Communication, that's the Miss Win radios removed. Outside repairs for the police equipment, what they requested, again, I just revised it on a pro rata basis on what the expenditures from this year. Fire, as I said previously and showed on the thing, that's the breathing apparatuses. Everything else in that budget is unchanged from the previous budget. Public Works Street, now this one's a little different. I actually...
Wait a minute, Mark, you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Mickens.
Mr. Mickens, use your mic, please.
First of all, thanks. Can you hear me? First of all, it's on.
No, the bottom. This one.
You got to hold it when you talk.
First of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you did in the short time that you had to do this in, you and Mr. Lala. The only thing I'm concerned about here in the fire, and I'm glad we got Mr. Andrews in the audience, because I have been to one of their training camps down in Jackson, and I have been in that building with that smoke and fire all around me with the mask and everything on. I guess what I'm trying to say is no other way they could keep this apparatus. I mean, that's a must for a fireman.
I agree, so you hold that, hold it. No, not your button, just your fall. Let me get to the end, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. And I should have said
I'm
that.
not putting you off, but I think when we get to the end, you'll be able to see kind of.
Yeah. And I should have said that from the beginning. Once we go through this, what we did, or what they did, and I approved and looked with them, is that we took out everything we had to get to make sure we were at a balanced budget. There will be time for discussion of things that we could potentially put back in, and I agree with you. The two things that hurt me the most, well, there were three: the raises, obviously, but the breathing apparatuses, and then also the radios for the police department. I think both of those are life-saving pieces of equipment that we need. And as I have stated before, even though we had that budgeted originally, I'm going to work tirelessly to find grant money to replace those costs. But we have got to do everything we can for our first line defenders. Sorry, continue.
And specifically that one, you'll see at the end what I mean. Okay, Public Works Street. This one, if you see that it's green, it actually went up. The rationale for that is that right now we have our third grapple truck, the boom truck, is essentially inoperable. I've got Mr. Langford and I that runs the garage. We received the quote from Holmac. He and I both negotiated with them, talked to them many times. That's the people to repair it. And, to get it, it needs significant, the boom itself, the knuckle boom needs significant repairs. So if we don't repair it, it's essentially just a not very good dump truck.
Right.
So it's down in Meridian waiting to be repaired. And in my mind, it has to be repaired to even be sold, auctioned, whatever the city would want to do with it. That is 31,000-ish, based on including taxes. reduction in equipment in Public Works and Street was the additional vehicles and additional equipment. That was small equipment, weed eaters, blowers, and then zero-turn riding lawnmowers that they requested. We discussed the solid waste budget. The convention center, this was reduced back to what was budgeted last year. What was cut was several things that Regina and I talked about. Some of those items were possibly replacing the carpet in the front of the entranceway because it's soiled and needs to be replaced, stage lighting, several other things. You turn over care and maintenance budget. This primarily, we budgeted to fix the police department roof and the municipal complex roof. I budgeted based on the number or the amount of roof, square feet under roof to try to pick up the, I don't know what the city calls it, but I call it the strip mall complex, adjacent to the actual police department complex and court. That probably will not be able to be done. Will $100,000 re-roof the police department? I mean, it might, I don't know. But that's why it didn't go to zero there. The garage, the repairs and maintenance on the police, again, that was revised based on the pro rata basis of expenditures this year. The out of service of the street, that was reduced to the previous year's allocation. This year was very expensive because of multiple repairs to trucks, new engine in a truck, I think replacement of the grapple boom on another boom truck that we had. Cemetery, we put extra money in there to do the ditch, to grub and clear the ditch that runs, essentially bisects Friendship Cemetery, and then to bush hog the very back towards the river. That was cut back to the original allocation. And then the Parks and Rec budget, where the salaries and all this, these are the part-time concession workers that essentially just had way too many hours that were put in the budget. So those were revised to match, and it's still probably a little, maybe more than what the concession stand workers would work, but it's close and would pay for them to work. The capitalized equipment, that's kind of a misnomer because even the equipment that we put in there shouldn't be capitalized, but they have no other line item for it to go into. It's non-capitalized equipment, but it is equipment. The other items that were in there were essentially repair and maintenance for the parks. So again, deferred maintenance that was in the slide. So essentially what we have mathematically, you have the original deficit on the front page, which was in the budget that I sent you. The budget you originally looked at with solid waste included produced over a $1 million deficit. The sum of the reductions, changes, and all the departmental revisions, okay, reduces that by $985,000 plus $200,000 in additional revenue based on revising up the garbage revenues. That gives us a subtotal of $120,000 to the good side. And then there's an adjustment of $43,000, and that's just it's not a discrepancy, but originally when we did it, we had $143,000 for Parks and Rec. We revised that down to $100,000, and to make that adjustment, I had to put that back in there. It's just a mathematical thing. It doesn't impact anything. But
Does everybody understand that, what you're saying?
To keep the deficit that I showed you, otherwise I'd have to put it back up and revise that deficit number. So if you look at the revised budget that you were sent, that creates a potential surplus of $163,878. Now, back to Mr. Mickens and his point and what the mayor said. Is this a livable budget, and can the city live by this budget? Absolutely. In many cases, it's more than the budget that they had and exists on right now at a departmental level. Many things were kept that, were increases from last year. What did we do? We took the big things out that the city has not done well planning for. Capital improvements, equipment, deferred maintenance costs. To Mr. Mickens' point, is there extra money that you can put towards the self-contained breathing apparatuses? Absolutely. The budget you vote on tonight would have that in a transfer out, as the original surplus was. And if that's something that you want to do, we can transfer it out and we can get the breathing apparatuses. This $163,878 is essentially, it has not been allocated to a specific department. It would go into a transfer out in the administrative and finance budget. That's how you would approve it tonight. And, you know, if y'all collectively wanted to say, you know, we feel like we should fund these self-contained breathing apparatuses for the fire department, then you really don't have to do anything. We could make the transfer, and we transfer that out of the administrative and finance budget to the fire department after the fact, and they could get their breathing apparatuses.
But it's whatever you choose.
But it's whatever you choose. That's why we didn't allocate it there. I mean, the only reason I cut the biggies that were big additions across the budget fairly is what I tried to do. Does that make sense? That's why I took the radios out of police, took this. I took the things that the department heads felt were needs and asked for that were big, but tried to be fair to every one of them.
Right, let me emphasize that too, is when we were looking at this, there were obvious things that, you know, just when you heard the number, that would have to come out. It hurt to take everything out. It hurt not to be able to focus on, you know, salary increases. It hurt to see the coverage in the media today where people who've worked very, very hard, like Ms. Vaughn, since she arrived, we all remember that she arrived in very difficult circumstances and has tried very hard and has actually put some really good policies in place that have gotten us to where we are today. But she got no credit for that. She got a bad headline today that was very unfair. I'm going to get off of that. So anyway, what I'm saying is, Mark and Delilah and I put this together, primarily those two. I just looked at it really towards the end and talked to them beforehand. But there's no reason we can't discuss tonight what we potentially think could go back inside what we see at about that bottom number. So I hope that that's what our discussion will be. We don't need any political, you know, nobody needs to, you know, to try to win political points here or bring up conversations that are not effective to what we're trying to do for the citizens. So I hope that we will look at this carefully, thoughtfully, and see how we can do the best we can for the citizens.
Question. I see that we were talking about getting things back. I see that there was an increase in salaries for the police department. Did they ask for more budgeted officers, or is that something?
It's rank increases.
That was a good question, thank you. We are also allowing questions from the audience if anybody has one. Mike, she needs a mic. I'm sorry, Miss Stewart, you're going to have to...
Can everybody hear me now?
Not in the room, I think they could probably hear you on TV.
Yeah.
On Facebook, but...
Can everybody hear now?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, looking at this budget here, and I understand that I'm not understanding is I don't see anything for the city employees as far as we talk about buying equipment. Yes, you need equipment, but what about pay increases for the employees? Is there nowhere we can get money to add to the budget for that? Because when I look at waste, we have $2-point-something million that we take in waste, and yet we put out about $1.5 million. So where's that money shifted? How can we make that work so we still can add money in the budget to do these pay increases, which is minimum?
So where does the difference come from between the cost of the waste and the revenue? Because you do make a profit. It goes to fund all the other things in the city.
Well, could we not fund something that if it was last year, the employees had a pay increase, but we're up to 4 years, going on 5 years. So, how could we effectively budget and run a city with people working that's not getting pay increase?
I don't know the answer to that. The answer to that is me, if as a private citizen to the city, would be as follows. As a private citizen, when I run my business, to give pay raises to my employees, I have to be profitable. We don't have profit because we're a municipality. However, the city has to be run in an efficient manner. And back to what we talked about last week, the main way that municipalities are successful is managing their finances and growing. That provides extra revenue. Right now, this year, you are essentially hemmed in because the third way is to raise taxes, but we can't raise taxes again by law this year. So, what in my mind, the city, all of y'all, whoever else, needs to get the same thing we talked about, a plan comprehensively for who gets a raise, how they get a raise, how they're judged. Can you do it this year? If there's something else you want to cut out of that budget, the difference is those are one-time expense. Most of those are all one-time expenditures tied to the revenue that comes in this year. Pay raises are forever, unless they're not. And, I have to say we're fortunate that we didn't, that Mr. Mickens brought up not wanting to do the 3%, because had we done 3% pay raise or whatever, and figured this out in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, we would have been obligated. You would have monthly expenditures that the city could not afford. And the city would be running a deficit into its cash balance, spending its cash most likely, and would be in even worse financial shape than it is now.
I'd like to answer that as well from my perspective as a new mayor. I think if the city had a priority of raises for employees, which we should, can't do that in 1 year. The council and previous mayors should have been looking at this when they were closing, taking out bonds to pay the streets and such things like that, to be honest. That's not throwing shade on anybody, that's just fact. I've also mentioned at this meeting before that our employees have extremely good benefits. We were in a meeting last week with our insurance brokers who told us, they work with other municipalities, that ours is second to none in the area. That a lot of employees, when they leave us and go to start or surrounding areas, they realize that the little increase they got in pay actually took more money out of their pockets because of insurance costs they had to pay in other areas. So I just keep reminding us of that, because insurance in this day and time is a really, really good incentive for employees. Look, I understand that everybody would like to have a raise. Nobody is ever paid probably what they're truly worth. But we have to also remember when we're doing this that we are not using our personal money for this. This is taxpayer dollars that we are instructed to be good stewards of. And so, from my opinion, and y'all are more than asked to ask questions, I'm not trying to cut anybody off, but we seem to be going down the same road with the same questions and the same answers. Where we are today, because of how the city has been run, is where we are today. We can debate this, we can twist it, we can turn it, we can do big headlines. The facts are in front of you in black and white.
When you bring up about the insurance, I was also in that meeting, I'm on that board as well. The guy did bring up that back in 2017, I want to say when the city did award raises, they went into the insurance surplus money.
Correct.
And there is $1.2 million of surplus money, of which only, I think he said 614,000
Yes.
was the number that could be in the range. So we're looking at $600,000 in an insurance reserve fund that has to be given back to the employees. Also, there are stipends that can be given to the employees through the American Rescue Plan. And there are multiple cities that are doing that. Jackson has literally just put $5.7 million to the side out of $23 million that they got and received from the American Rescue Plan to give back. So I did want to elaborate on that. So Ms. Stewart, I do have some stuff that I do want to talk about pertaining to that. But there is money that the city does have that we can figure out a plan to award these employees. If we say that these employees are top-notch employees and we love and we admire the things that they do, and then we come up with a little, I'm not gonna say a little hiccup, but we have a hiccup, but there are still other avenues in place that we can award these workers. Like I say, that's $600,000. We had a $576,000 surplus that we were interested in giving to the employees. So here we are with not one, but two rams in the bushes with $600,000 surplus in the insurance fund, as well as money that can be given to them out of the American Rescue Plan.
Okay, I think we need to take that in two parts. I think we need to go back to first where we are with the insurance surplus. And Pat, you might need to weigh in on this a little bit too, because we asked about this extensively because we were, like Pierre said, we were interested because it has been used for raises before. What that is the city is really self-insured. Pat, you need to help me with this. What they recommend is, I believe you keep at least $300,000 in that reserve. Currently, the city has employees, a couple of employees who have been very ill. And that's why you want to have good insurance for survival, for being able to continue to get paid when you're not able to work. But when you do that, you have to make sure you have reserves that cover those expenses. We are just over $1 million. I asked the question during that meeting, where should we keep that reserve? They safely say, I think around $300,000, but that's a guesstimation, just like our income is for the city. When you look at these numbers that we're talking about, these are guesstimations on good, solid information that usually helps you calculate this, but that's what we're working on, right? So I spoke out at that meeting saying that I tend to, like to have money in reserve in case of an emergency that you can't see for coming, and you know how health expenses are now. People without health insurance can be bankrupt in a matter of time. This insurance that we have helps people when they go and get medical care or medicine. It helps keep money in their pocket to be able to spend on the necessities of life. So Pat, if you will kind of go into more detail on that, because what I don't want to do tonight, and I feel like we're heading that way, is to throw out information or questions without details in them. Some things can sound really good, but when you break them down, they're not so good. I'm not saying this is not, but I want to make sure tonight that we're very clear to all the citizens, and if anybody's watching Facebook responses, I would ask them to stop doing that right now. Because when council members are watching Facebook and seeing what the responses are out there from people out there who have their opinions, and they're welcome to their opinions, what they're not welcome to is their own facts to try to push their opinions, okay? So tonight, we're going to go with facts from this table. Thank you. Pat?
Thank you. We did meet on last week, and as the mayor stated, we are fully insured, which means we are self-insured, which means we pay dollar for dollar every claim that is incurred. And then once the claim reaches $50,000, we have a third-party insurance company that pays those claims. Now, what we're dealing with is risk. We don't know from month to month, week to week, whether or not we're gonna have a big claim. He threw out the number of 340,000. That's the bare minimum that we need to keep in the budget for that, but we never know, it's an unknown. If we can keep more, we need to keep more. But, and I'm not saying $2 million, I'm not saying that, but I do think that we never wanna get in a position where we have large claims and we can't pay them.
Because if we get into that position, it will affect our employees. Now, the second part of that was Pierre's question on, he was using Jackson as an example. My understanding is to be able to use that money for that type of thing is it has to be some type of, what is that to be able to pay employees? Does anybody here know exactly how that works?
Well, I did a lot of research on it, and I actually had a presentation for you guys. I tried to get on the agenda tonight to present, but,
Well, you're on right now, present.
well, I got it everything right here. If you wanna hear it, I can stand up and give it to you. I
That'd
can
be great
sit
if you
down.
can go up to, no, I'd love for you to go over where July is and present.
Awesome.
Good.
Good afternoon once again. Thank y'all for allowing me the opportunity to come up here and speak before you.
Thank you.
In the American Rescue Plan formed by the current President Joe Biden, $1.9 trillion was allocated in the restoration of the United States due to the coronavirus pandemic. Of that $1.9 trillion, $6 billion was allocated to the state of Mississippi. Columbus, Mississippi will receive a total of $5.7 million with the potential of being matched, $11.4 million to be used in certain categories. They include to respond to the negative financial impacts to business or households, and or aid to travel, tourism, and hospitality, business negatively impacted by COVID. 2, for the provision of government services as to the extent of the reduction in revenue. 3, to invest in water, sewer, and or broadband infrastructure. And 4, to increase pay to eligible workers performing essential work during the pandemic. Essential work is defined as work involving regular in-person interactions or regular physical handling of items that were also handled by others. Under the rescue plan, we can show all of our employees that we appreciate them enough, since with the new information presented by the mayor and staff, that we don't have the money to do it anymore. Our city workers from top to bottom are pivotal assets to the city of Columbus. From the underpaid and overworked fireman that wakes up in the middle of the night by blaring alarms to assist with a house fire and to assist with dealing with people who may have just lost everything, or the male or female officer who puts their life in danger daily by assisting with protecting and serving our city. The public works person who has to answer the complaint of the constituents about overgrown ditches that need to be cut, that also have snakes, rats, beavers, and other creatures indigenous to that environment. The clerk who is handed payments from someone that they may or may not know have COVID-19. We were all affected and living in unprecedented times and still had to work to not only care and provide for our families, but keep this city afloat. Many cities and counties all over the United States has created what is called premium pay through the American Rescue Plan. Cities and counties which have now started in the state of Mississippi is using and allocating money for just this reason, to give and show support of our city workers. I've seen figures range from $1,200 to county workers in Richland County, South Carolina, receiving a generous amount of $5,000 stipends. Talk about growth and revenue increases. Between the months of March 20th, 2020 and March 31st, 2021, we all put ourselves in harm's way daily, and even more so now going forward with the precautionary measures now in place, because the CDC and other health-related entities are now getting an understanding of the COVID-19 virus and all of its variants. Our workers deserve not only fair wages, something that we may not be able to give them, but fair payments as well under the American Rescue Plan. Government works best when it works for all people, not just the wealthy few and corporations. The ARP approaches economic recovery from the ground up by helping people pay their rent, feed their families, fix their cars, and resume their lives after an unprecedented pandemic like the one we are still facing. And we can do just that for the odd number 260 employees in the city. Everyone who works deserves a wage that covers the basic cost of living. Our interim COO, Mark Alexander, stated that in his research, other cities like Starkville don't even look at the pay of the city of Columbus because it is just that low and off. The mayor, COO, and all members of the council also agreed that pay, especially entry-level pay, was low and that raises were in need. With newfound information, as originally stated, we are not at the point of giving these raises, but we can award them premium pay through the American Rescue Plan. With a rough estimate of 260, giving everyone premium pay of $1,500, that's only $390,000 coming out of an amount that exceeds well over $5 million. $5,000 payments to all city workers working through the beginning times of COVID-19 will amount to $1.3 million, with the possibility of being matched can equal $2.6 million going into our city personnel. Talk about a tax and morale boost. That's $10,000 if proper paperwork is filed and submitted in a timely and efficient, effective, proactive manner. $2.6 million out of a matched $11.4 million the city of Columbus will be able to receive. That's roughly what, 25%? Let's not bring up the $11 million with the potential of being increased that the county is getting. You know, the city does lay in the county. This money is allocated. It's other states that have used it. It's other cities that's used it. I have articles here. Ohio Republicans pitched $1,000 bonuses. Jackson, Mississippi County has voted to use $5.7 million of the $21 million it has received to pay essential workers. Richland County awarding $5,000 payments. Columbia, South Carolina has approved hazard pay for city workers who have toiled through the COVID-19 pandemic. $2,500 stipends after the county approved the $5,000. Others are doing it slowly but surely, and with new discovering information, now more than ever is the perfect time to show our support for the roughly 260 employees of the city of Columbus. By awarding $5,000 checks to all employees within the time frame of March 20th, 2020 and March 31st of 2021. Our employees, are they worth $1.3 million or are they only worth $390,000? With matching potential to be subtracted from $11.4 million the city of Columbus could possibly receive. So I was here asking you all, the request to approve this for our city personnel from March 20, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Premium pay of $5,000 under the American Rescue Plan, and to begin the process so we can start.
Councilman, do you mind staying there, please?
I sure will.
Thank you for the presentation. Very passionate. There was some good information in there. What I'd like for Mark to come up too, so we could discuss this, to make sure we understand how this money can and cannot be used. And I think that you might have some questions, so if you're all there together, that you might be able to answer. It's my understanding, and I think and I could be wrong, but that's one-time money. It's not money we can put into the budget to give salaries. Tonight, we're trying to balance a budget to go forward. Now, yes, that money that you're mentioning, I think we should look seriously at trying to award our employees, because I like you and Councilman, all the councilmen, Councilwoman Stewart, and everybody want to see our employees paid fairly. But also, when we're using this money, we have to be very careful in how we award it and how we use it, because when it's federal dollars, there's a lot of serious stipulations that we have to be very careful in doing, and that's what we're doing now. That's my understanding. Mark, can you, because I could be wrong, man, and I think Pierre was great to come up, and he obviously did a lot of work presenting this. He's very passionate about helping the employees, and I applaud him for that. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're all on the same page on this, and this is a good place to do it, Pierre. Thank you for doing it.
Well, first off, this is the general fund budget. Okay. The items that are included in the budget, okay, they're paid for out of the general fund. That's what we're approving. Approving the general fund budget tonight no bearing on anything that Pierre said. If you wanted to give them as much as is available, that is not, I don't want to say it's not relevant, but you have to fund the operation of the city as it is laid out.
I understand that's why I said I didn't want to do the presentation, but since you brought that up, you know, I was trying to get clarity on if I was able to speak and get added to the agenda, of which you stated that you misunderstood the request that I asked you. But if I was placed on the agenda, if it was allowed, then this presentation could have been presented tonight. Instead, I'm falling on the back end of something else when this will be presented again Tuesday if there's no action.
I'm glad
Well,
you
Pierre,
raised
you
the
sent me a message and I said, well, Pierre, that's a
wait,
good
wait.
idea. No.
No. We're gonna stay on task. We're not gonna go debate about y'all's text messages. You got to do your thing, which we appreciate it.
And I understand that. And he
And I
brought
think
up
it's
the
a
fact that we
fair- I think
can't
it's a
vote on it,
fair
and I understand that as
presentation
well.
for the councilman to bring up. Let's just answer the question and not, I just don't wanna get way off on topic.
Right.
Okay.
I was
So,
just
Mark,
doing what I was
think you
saying.
answered the question. Is what I said correct?
This is the general fund budget. If you want to give one-time money out of that, that's fine. But it doesn't have any bearing on what you need to vote for tonight.
And I understand that.
All right,
The only
thank
thing
you.
that I'm stating is if we can't give the employees raises, when we sat at City Hall, you went around the room and you asked every single individual in there, do you think the city employees deserve raises? And everybody in that room said yes.
You
So
shouldn't
now
have
we
voted-
are,
You should have voted for $6.5 million in paving last year.
now
should've
we
voted
can't,
for this-
we can always talk about what we did in the past. This is not the past. What we're working on right now is putting money in pockets of people that you guys, that all of us said deserved this money. That's what we said.
Yes, and.
Nobody said no. Everybody shook their head yes. We have a way to do it. If we cannot give them raises, if we cannot, I'm fine with that. I totally understand that. But we have, like I said, other avenues and options to give people some type of
Right, and we can look
incentive
at
to
that
let
later.
them
We can't do it
know
tonight,
that we
basically.
care,
We can't do it tonight, but I'm glad you made the presentation.
which is understood.
It is understood, thank you. And I think it was a good point to bring up because the citizens know that money is available now that they did not know. They also know that Councilman Beard is very passionate about making this happen. He also pointed out that all of the council members would like for our hardworking staff to have raises, and we will approach this at the appropriate time. But it was good to bring it up tonight, Pierre. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Anything else?
My question is, your personal opinion, is the $163,000 surplus enough to cover us for the unexpected?
No. You have, I got a quote to fund the fire station that was just hit for $256,000. How you gonna pay for that?
I think it's important to understand that the city does not have a cash flow.
What I'm trying to say is anything, to Pierre's point, I don't want to go back and be later, but any money that you spend, it's not that you can afford it, it's what is given up. That is, in my mind, the cost of the next best alternative not selected. Yes, if you want to spend $5,000, I think, just like we said in the meeting, there's a lot of people that work very hard and deserve money. There's a lot of people that busted their behinds during a once in multi-generational pandemic that probably deserve a cookie, a bonus, or something to do. Okay? And out of a once in a generation money of $5.6 million, is it going to break the city's bank to reward them? Absolutely not. I don't think so. But in thinking about that, what do you give up? Do you give up the ditch down in College Street and 15th Street South that's been flooding for 50 years? I don't know. The reason why we don't know is because the city has very few plans, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and if it does, it doesn't follow them. It has not historically followed them. So, do I think that you have the money? You have money. You have your fund balance, which is your operating cash balance. Your operating cash balance is going to be depleted by the unbudgeted funds that were approved last year, okay? that amount is going to be how much it goes down. It's going to go down by the amount of the unbudgeted funds. It could be 1.3 million, it could be 1.5 million, plus all the other unspent funds across all the departments this year. So the city's operating cash balance, or its fund balance, will go down. At some point, you know, that is how you're paying your employees, that's how you're cash flowing the city. If you have to have that. So we're not even in a static position. You're going into a worse financial position right now. Okay? And there's legacy reasons for that. Okay? Historical legacy reasons that have not been addressed that created some of these issues. Do I think you could take the money and fund the breathing apparatuses and you'd be okay? Probably. I mean, again, it depends. Does the council think you could spend it on? I mean, and also the budget is as good as the budget is made. Anybody can put together a budget. We tried, and I know it seems funny, but we tried to revise every line item back to be realistic. Not just throw it in there and hope that it works out, to be realistic.
And let me add here too that we went to every department. I didn't go to every department, Mark did, and sat down with the department heads and discussed this with them in detail. Looked at the equipment they were talking about, studied. I went to the major three. Mark went to every single one and put a lot of thought and time and reasoning and questionings to them on where we could put this money in the budget. And I'm not ashamed to say that they said that's the first time that they ever had that. So I promise you, despite what you might read in the headlines, we have done due diligence here. We are not perfect, and I understand everybody's frustration at this table, and I take blame for it. Because y'all didn't get the budget as quickly as I had hoped, and it wasn't accurate. That's my fault, that's on me. What I think we need to do tonight, though, is be as realistic in our thinking and thinking of the overall arches of what I mentioned at the beginning of this thing is we've got to make the decisions of what is the best interest of the city as a whole. And that's not easy to do with the budget that's in front of us. It is not a healthy budget. We don't have a lot of cash flow through here. We need today and moving forward to start working towards that. There were some things taken out of that budget, like roof repairs and stuff, that affect our employees on a daily basis. We have employees whose roofs are falling in their offices. You know, that is a serious issue. People don't want to work in an environment like that. We have a lot of serious issues that we have got to face, guys. It is not that we don't want to give our employees a raise. We would love to. And I'm prepared to sit down with each and every employee and prepare to and explain to them why we can't and where we are in comparison of other salaries. Any of those things that there's people that care about out there, I get it. But what we have before us tonight, and we have to do it tonight by midnight, we have to approve a balanced budget. And I promise you, going forward, we will not be down to the 10th hour like this. You will have a budget in front of you that you will work on it well in advance. I want to see us have a budget committee where members of the staff and even the community can be a part of it, these numbers, and help us figure it out. Not one person in this room is smart enough to have all the answers. Not everybody on this council is a CPA, and nor should they be. So we are where we are tonight, partly my fault, but partly I think everybody in this community can look in the mirror for a little bit. This is a community that needs to work together for the best of our... We like each other. We work well together. We may debate or go back and forth here, but we have no personal agendas. We laugh and talk afterwards. What we have in common is a passion for public service, or we wouldn't be up here. I encourage you out there that are watching, those of you who are commenting on social media, to be prepared to run next time. But in the meantime, again, I'm going to say, we are all entitled to our opinions, but we're not entitled to our own facts to try to support our opinions. We got to look at the numbers in black and white. All right.
I move that we approve the budget as presented.
I have a motion to approve the budget as presented by Councilwoman DeChico and a second by Councilman Green. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hands. All opposed, same sign. The motion passes 5-1. One thing we did not comment on earlier is 4-1. Sorry. Thank you, Mark. He gave me the 4 sign. Some people may be wondering why Councilman Jones is not here. He has to recuse himself from budget meetings because his sister is employed at City Hall. Okay, let me get my notes. Ask for a motion to adjourn. I'd like to remind everyone of our upcoming regular City Council meeting on September the 21st at 5 p.m. at the Columbus Municipal Complex. It will be live streamed. This concludes our special meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion by Councilman Green, a second by Councilman Beard. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The meeting